Okay, so we actually mentioned about the if statement, which is, thank you for pointing out. Man, I always forgot to record the class. Uh, so, so the if statement basically tells you that if the condition is true, then execute the body. If it's not true, then go to else if. If this condition is true, then execute this body. And this, if this condition is still not true, and then go to the next one. And it's still not true, then go to the else. So this is called if else. It's a nested if statement. Now, if statement can be a very simple if statement. Just if the condition is true, execute the body. If it's not true, then don't execute it. Or simply just if else. So there are three actually variations for the if statement. Okay. Now the while loop is basically, talk about repeated statement. If you have a, 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 a group of statements that you want to execute repeatedly, then while loop is a very good approach. So the syntax is that you use while and then a condition expression. That's a condition. Now, if the condition is true, then you execute the body of this while loop. And then once you complete the execution of the body, just go back and check the condition again. If it is still true, execute the bodies, and then check the condition again. If it's still true, and execute it again until you check the body and find out the expression is no longer true. Then you quit the while loop and execute the follow-up statements. So this is a while loop. Now, when you actually perform the while loop, then you will find out somehow in the body of the while loop, you need to change the variable to change the condition. Now, for example, if I say I declare x into x equals 2, and so then I'm going to say while the condition say x is less than or equal to 5, then I execute y equals x minus 1, z equals x times 2, and then I say this is a two statement I want to execute if x is less than 5, and which is the case, right? Because x equals 2. However, now when you actually say x equals 2 compare with 5, and 2 is less than or equal to 5, which is true, right? And then you execute y equals x minus 1, so y get 1. And z equals x times 2, so z get 4, right? And then you go back and the x equals 2, and the condition is still true, and you're going to execute this again, right? And then come back and check again. So then you will find out you will be trapped, because you're going to be actually continued to execute the while loop, and this is called infinite loop. Infinite loop is not good, That means your program is trapped. So that's the reason why in a while loop, you have to have at least a statement that eventually going to change the condition. So in this case, you need to change the value of x. Okay. So you're going to, in this case, I'm going to say x equals x plus 2. So I increment the value of x. Now, why is this? Because if I increment the value of x, then every time when I execute the while loop, the value of x is going to be increased by 2. So initially x equals 2, it's true, then y equals this, z equals this, and then x increment from 2 to 4. So then x equals 2, 2 plus 2 equals 4, assigned to x, so now the value of x is 4. And then you check the value, and 4 is still less than equals 5, then you're still going to execute the body, but now this time the value x has been increased again. So Now x equals 4. 4 plus 2 equals 6. 6 assigned to x. X equals 6. And then the 6 is no longer less than or equal to 5. So this is false. So you quit the while loop. So this is very important. Okay. So in the while loop, you must have a statement that changes the condition of the while loop. If you don't have anything like this, your while loop is going to be trapped, you know. Okay. So these are basically called a common error. Okay. So basically it's accidentally create an infinite loop. So for the infinite loop, you will always see that the Java is running. It's running forever until you actually interrupt by yourself. Okay. It could be like the infinite loop often caused by forgetting to update the variable in the body. Okay. Or by creating a loop expression whose evaluation to false isn't always reachable. Because every time when loop finish, you're going to go back and check the condition. And if condition is true, execute the loop. And then go back, check the condition. So you're going to actually repeatedly check the condition. So somehow you have to make sure the condition becomes false. Okay, becomes false. Not always true. Okay, so then you're going to terminate the while loop. Now for loop is actually, it's actually kind of a shortcut for while loop. You know, in a special case when the number of execution is actually limited. So you know exactly how many times the loop you're gonna do the loop. Then you can use the for loop. Remember, the for loop can always express using while loop. Now here is the example. Okay, so this is a for loop, and this is its equivalent of while loop. So it says like x equals 0 initially, then check the condition x less than 5 or not. And then you execute the loop and then increment the x. Because you know the value of x going to be, the value of I will be increased. So sooner or later, the condition xi less than 5 will not be true anymore. So in this case, you know exactly how many loop you're going to execute. So for loop is a very good substitution. So you can say I equals 0. So that's the initial condition. And that's the init condition. And that's the condition. Okay. Just like this one. And this is the increment of xi. So that's the body of incrementing the counter x or counter I. So this is actually equivalent. Okay. Now in this case, because you know exactly how many loops you're going to execute, you're going to execute 5 times. Okay. Because x is 0, and you increment x, so x is 1. Increment again, x is 2. So you're going to execute the while loop from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Okay. When x equals 5, then the while loop is going to be quit. Okay. Now, nested loop is a kind of loop that appears in the body of another loop, which is fine. But why, you want to use nested loop? In many cases, the nested loop are going to actually do a job that's very convenient and very easy to understand, because otherwise if you use one loop, it won't do the job well. So let's actually take a look at the example. Okay. I'm gonna actually show you the example like this. Let's see. Okay, here's the example. I include the code here. Now, if you're interested in, I can actually post this code on the Blackboard, but this is actually very simple code. Okay. So here, I try to, print out, 3 couple of days, for 3 weeks. So I declare a variable called num weeks. So that's the number of weeks I want to show. So I want to display days for 3 weeks, and that's a num days. That means the number of days in a week. So I'm going to use the for loop. So for I equals 0, I equals 1. So, and the condition says I less than or equal to number of weeks. Okay. So that's the increment of I. So that means I'm going to do the for loop for I equals 1 and check 1 is less than or equal to 3. So that's number 3, right? Num week is 3. Okay. So 1 is less than or equal to 3. And then I'm going to execute this statement. I'm going to print out weeks equals weeks colon 1. Okay. And then when I increment I to 2, and 2 is still less than or equal to 3, so I'm going to execute this weeks colon 2. And then I equals 3. 3 is less than or equal to num weeks, which is 3. So that's still true, right? Because I have a less than or equal to 3. So then I increment I, and then when I equals 4, that's no longer true. 4 is less than or equal to 3. That's not true anymore. So I only execute 3 times. I equals 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now inside this loop, I define another loop, and this loop is actually for j. I'm gonna count the j. J is from 1 to 7, number of days, which is 7. Okay. So when j equals 1, I print the day colon 1. When j equals 2, I print out the j days colon 2. Okay. Now, when I execute this code, you will find out, when I equals 1, then I gonna print a week colon 1. And then I gonna do the loop for j, j equals 1, j equals 2, j equals 3. So every time when I print out week colon 1, I gonna print actually 7 days. And then go back for I equals 2, then I print a weeks colon 2. Then I gotta print 7 days. Okay, let's run it. Okay, now this is the code. So the nested loop example. Okay, so week 1, that's first print out statement, right? And then I gotta print 7 days. So this is this using. So this is actually day 1, day 2, day 7. That's the inner loop. Okay, so that's the inner loop. By inner loop, and that's the outer loop. So outer loop is actually very less frequent than the inner loop, right? Because when I print one outer loop, when I equals 1, and then I can actually jump from j equals 1 to 7. Okay. And then once I finish this, and then I'm going to jump to check the outer loop. And then now I equals 2. And then for I equals 2, I'm going to actually run the complete loop for the j. So I'm going to run another 7 days. And now, so that's why it just gave you some kind of a list. Week 1, day 1, day 2, day 1 to day 7. Week 2, day 1 to day 7. So that's basically, you can use the nested loop to achieve this display. Okay, so that's the nested loop. Now, the next thing I want to actually talk about is two keyword. One is break, the other one is continue. I believe in Python we also discussed the two actually keyword. I know. One is break. One is continue. Sometimes when you do the loop, so when you execute the loop actually gonna actually start from 0 all the way to whatever the number you want to, the loop you want to run. Okay, if you want to run 100 loops, then you're gonna say I equals 0, then I less than 100, and increment I. So something like this, and you can actually execute each of the loops. Now, if you actually put the break inside the loop, whenever the Java C break, you're gonna quit the loop. Okay, it's not gonna continue. So if when during the loop of like when I equals 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then suddenly when I equals 4, and then the Java actually execute the break, and then you're gonna quit the loop. No matter how many loops actually you expect to complete, but if you see the break, then it stop, okay, and it quit. Now continue is kind of different. Continue statement is in a loop cause an intermediate jump to the loop condition check. Remember, when you do the for loop, you start to initial value I equals 0 and check the condition I less than like 100. So then you increment the I. So I equals 0, you check the condition and execute the loop. And then I equals 1, you check the condition and it's still true, and then you execute the loop. And when I equals 4, and you check the condition, yeah, it's still less than I less than 4 less than 100. So you're gonna execute the body, and suddenly you actually see the continue statement. Okay. So then in this case, when Java see the continue statement, you're gonna quit the current loop and jump to check the next condition. So that means the next value of I. Okay. So see the difference between this. Break is actually say I totally quit the loop. The second continue basically means I just quit the current body. Okay. And check the next value of I. So to see this, let's actually go back to the example. It's the same example we just checked. So the first part is in the nested loop, and the second part is the break statement. Okay. So when I print out says break example, and then I'm gonna do the loop. So so when you check that code, what are you gonna see? It's a for loop, right? I from 0 to all the way to 5, because when I equals 0 and I less than 6, increment I. So you're gonna execute the loop for I equals 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When I equals 6, that condition is no longer true, then I quit the for loop. However, in this for loop, each loop, in each of the value, for each of the value of I, I'm gonna execute the print statement. I'm gonna actually print out the value of I. Okay, now before I do this, I execute the if condition. Okay, the branch. So what do you expect? When I equals 0, then what the for loop are gonna execute? When I equals 0, then if statement are gonna check 0 equals 4. What is this gonna tell you? What is this condition? When I equals 0. It's a false, right? It's a false. So 0 is not equals 4. So it's not a true, it's false. So if it's false, what happens?
It continues on to the print statement.
You're going to skip that one. So it will not execute the break statement, right? So you're going to check. So basically, if the condition is false, then that means basically you're going to skip the if statement. So if that, it just like as if that the if statement does not exist, right? So it just print out the value of I. So when I equals 0, you're going to print out I equals 0. Now, then back to the condition again, increment I and I equals 1. 1 compared with 4 is still not true. And then skip the if statement. So I do this. Now, when I equals 0, 1, 2, 3, until when I equals 4, then 4 equals 4, that's true. Then I have to execute the break. Now, the break basically says, the break gonna actually gonna quit, gonna allow, gonna eventually says, okay, I quit. So I'm gonna actually stop the for loop. Okay. Now the second one is a continuous example. So it's basically the same, but I just do the loop for j, not I. Okay, j from 0 to 5. Okay, j equals 0, j less than 5, j less than 6, and then when j equals 4, I continue. Now it's exactly the same, but except when j equals 4, then I'm gonna execute the continue. Now the continue basically means I'm not gonna quit the loop, but I'm gonna quit the current body, right? Execution. So basically, I'm not gonna execute the system dot out the print line. I'm not gonna execute this one, but I'm gonna jump to j equals 5, and then come back. When j equals 5, this is no longer true. If statement is no longer true, then I'm gonna execute I equals 5. Okay. So now let's see the difference between break and continue. Okay, I skipped the first part, the nested loop. So break example. I equals 0, 1, 2, 3. When I equals 4, because I hit the break, right? So you're gonna quit the loop. So it's stopped. There's no follow-up. Okay, so it stopped at the when I equals 3. Now let's see the continue. Okay, there's a continue example. Now I equals 0, 1, 2, 3. When I equals 4, j equals 4, it just continue and then stop executing this statement. But jump to j equals 5. So j equals 5, you're gonna execute the 5. So you're still gonna execute the j 1, 2, 3, but jump 4. But here, for the break, when I actually see the 4 and 1, 2, 3, and I terminate the whole for loop. So you see the difference here. So that's basically the difference between continue and break. Now it's up to you. When you actually write your code, depend on what you need, then you can actually either use the break or use the continue. It's different, actually. It serves different purpose. Any questions on this? Okay. Now, we actually mentioned a variable name scope. It's actually, this is basically the same as Python. So if you declare a variable like int x in the main function, then inside the main function, this variable x can be used. Okay, anywhere in this main method. But if you declare in a particular in a particular body, okay? So for example, if you use if statement, you declare a type in an if statement, say if x equals less than 100, and then I declare a variable called y, and then y equals x times 2, and I can print out okay. So then in the if statement, if x equals 50, and then yeah, f equals 50, then I get into the if statement, and then the first one is declaration of a variable y, and then it's an integer, right? So y equals x times 2, then it's 50. Oh, sorry, I forgot the semicolon. 50 times 2, that's 100 assigned to y. So when I print this, I'm going to print out 100, right? Okay. Now, this y is only recognizable inside this if statement. Okay. Now, if I actually outside of statement, so in the next actually statement, if I say y equals 20, then it will give you error message because y is declared inside this scope, but outside scope, it's not valid. However, if you declare x in here, and then if statement is still in this range, so this x is okay because it's declared, but not declared inside the body, but used outside. That's out of range. Okay. So that's basically defines the range for a variable. Now, before I actually call it, just wrap up the whole module, I just actually want to emphasize one of the features that in Java, it's called enumerations. Okay, enumeration allows you to declare a type. Okay, normally it's the type which contains a limited value. Okay, so for example, if you want to declare a type called, x int x equals int x, so x is integer, right? Now sometimes you want to declare a certain type of value, and this type of value just will take certain type, which take only certain type of value. Now, for example, if I say I want to define a variable which takes the value of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then 4 days in a week. Okay, so then I can use enumeration type. Now the syntax is like this. It's called a public. Okay, and so then I can declare like a public enum, enum, and I say week. Okay, and then I'm gonna say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because I'm running out of space. I'm gonna continue here. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Okay, I can declare a week called something like this. And then in the Java program, I can define a variable of which is week type. Say I can say week, my week. Okay. Okay. So then I can assign a value to my week. The value I'm gonna assign to my week, I only limit it to these values. Okay. But it's actually, the type is week. So I have to type by syntax, I have to type week dot and one of these value. I'm going to say Wednesday. Okay. So this my week is type of this week type. And the value of my week can be Wednesday, Tuesday, or Monday. Only actually 7 values. Okay. So enumeration type is actually useful when sometimes when I want to define a variable which only takes a limited number of values. Okay. For example, I can define an enumerate type called month. So then the value of this new enumerate type only has 12 values, right? And there's a January, February, and then you can define 12 months. Now, what about the other type? Like, for example, I define a variable, enumerate type called traffic light. What do you think the value could be for traffic light? Could it be red, green, yellow, right? Or orange. Is it yellow or orange? Orange, I think. So you can declare, you can define an enumerate type called traffic light. Okay. So let's take a look at the example. The challenge activity 4.11.1. Let's take a look. Okay. What do you want to do this with this? So I want to print either fluid or drink. Okay. Depend on the value of user item. Okay. So let's see. Take a look at the code. So grocery sorter. So I define an enumeration type called grocery item. Okay. Now the grocery item actually has 4 values: GR apples, GR bananas, GR juice, and GR waters. Okay. So these are 4 items in the grocery item. Okay, these are the type. So now in the public static main method, I just declare a type, user item. User item is a grocery. It's a type of grocery item. Okay. So then I assign a grocery item dot gr apples. So I assign gr apple to user item. Now, what the code you want to actually write the code to print either food or drink, depending on the value of the user item. So now, let's first check, what is a drink? What is actually fluid? Look at each of the item. Is the apple a fluid or a drink?
Fruit.
Apple is a fluid, right? And banana is a fluid too, right? Now what about juice? It's a drink. water is a drink, right? So now you want to do is just check if user item is something. I don't know what it is. And then I can actually print out fruit. Okay. In which condition I gonna print? Fruit. Oh, sorry. That's else. Right. For which condition? When user item equals if the user item equals grocery item dot gr apples, then it should print as a fruit, right? What else? Is this the only condition?
No, it should also be or if user item equals grocery item dot gr bananas.
Okay. Banana, B-A-N-A-N-A-S, right? So now if the user item equals grocery dot gr apples or user item equals grocery item dot gr bananas, then you're going to print out a fruit. So in this particular case, the user item is a grocery item gr apple, so it should be printed out as fruit, right? Yeah, we got it. So this basically tells you how to use the enumeration type. So enumeration type is basically user define the type. So you define the type, okay? And when you define the type, you know exactly this type can only take certain values, okay? Like I say, traffic light. You know the traffic light gonna be red and green and orange, okay? There are many different user-defined types. So you can always, in certain case, you can always define the type by your own instead of using the type that provided by the library. Okay, I think that's pretty much all for the module 1. I'm pretty much done with this. So so the next thing we're going to talk about is the module 2. We're going to jump to module 2. Now, before I continue, do you have any questions? So module 2 is actually about arrays. I think the concept for the array is very easy to say. So we're going to spend a lot of time, doing some of the examples. Okay, the array, the concept is pretty simple. Okay, so an array is an ordered list of items. Okay. Now, if you actually, so far we know how to declare a type, right? So you're going to say int x. So that means I declare x as an integer type. And I can declare double y. I declare y as a double type. It's a floating point type. And I can declare z as a string type. Okay. I can do that, right? And then I can declare a string, says student. So basically, I declare a variable called a student so that I can assign a name to the student. Fine, right? That's not a problem. Now, what about if I want to define a group of students? Okay. If I want to define a group of students, not just a single student, like John or Andy or a particular student. I want to declare a group of students. So for example, I want to define 20 students. Okay. So now you can probably what you can do is, what about this? I'm going to say student 1, string, student 2, string, student 3. So I can keep doing this, right? I have to write this 20 times because I want to define 20 students. Okay. Not bad. So I just repeat this 20 times. And I can even use copy paste. Just string student 1, I copy paste 20 times and then change the 1 to 2, change the second one to 2, third one to 3, and the fourth one to 7. But what about if I want to declare a group of students with like a 1,000 students? Do you want to actually copy paste the 1,000 times? That's not realistic, right? So Java actually, just like any other language, Java actually provide a type called an array. So array is the ordered elements, ordered list of items of a given data type. Okay. Each item in the array is called element, an element. So here's the syntax. The data type could be int, double, string. That's a data type. And then I have a square bracket, okay? And then the array name. And then that's a syntax new. And data type again, repeat the data type and the square bracket, and I put a number of elements. Okay, so that's a very simple syntax. Now, in this case, if I declare an array of students with 20 students, okay, then I can say array of string. Okay, that's a data type. And I put the bracket, square bracket. And then I'm going to say student equals new string, right? I just repeat the data type. And then if I want to declare a 20 student, I can put a 20. Okay, so this way, I declare an array of strings. Now each array element is a string. So it's the array, the name is called student, and there are 20 items, 20 elements. And this is called the new operator, and this is array reference. Okay, that's the array reference. Now, how can we manipulate the data? Okay, so before we actually do this, let's actually check the Zai book to see how I did this. So let's go back to the Zybook. And I check another example. Module 2 array. So here, I can declare a string, a student, new string, which is now instead of 20, I use 5. Okay. So then, how are you going to assign the value to each of the element in the array? So when I declare a string of 5, remember I can actually assign to each of the element using the index. That's called the index. Okay. Now, the first student is a student. That's a name. And 0, square bracket 0. And then 0 is the index. And then the second one's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So each of this is an index. So this is actually, I can assign a name to a student 0, another name to a student 1, student 2, student 3, student 4. So I can assign each of this. Let's do that. Now, so that's fine, but only one thing you need to realize that if I declare a array of 100 item, 100 elements, the index is going to start from 0 to 99. So the last element, the index of the last element is not 100. It's 99. It's 100 short. It's 1 short. Okay. Just always keep that in mind because the index starts from 0. Okay. So in that case, if the array of 5 elements, then the index of the last element is 4. So I can assign a value. Okay. Now, one good thing about index array is because array use index from 0 to whatever the number of elements minus 1. So that's, you can manipulate the index. Okay. So for example, if I want to print out all the elements in the array, like a student 0, student 1, student 2, student 3, student 4, you don't have to type it 5 times. Okay. You can use the loop. Okay. Now the loop can actually loop around with the index. So when index is 0, I print student 0. When index 1, I print student 1. When index 2, I print student 2. So this is actually how I'm going to, output each of the student. I can use a loop. Okay. So you can print out John, Andy, Mary, Anne, and Tony. Any questions on this? So now I can actually use the assignment, but also I can use another approach to input the index. Okay. So I declare the index value, and then I can use a scanner. Okay. I can use a scanner to do this job. It says my scanner, my scan, new So if I use scanner, looks like I have to import the scanner. Okay, let's see. So what are you going to do? What do you think you're going to do with the scanner? You're going to actually say import Java dot utility udo. You're going to import the scanner, right? Okay. So now what I can do is I can use the for loop, right? I scan dot next. I assign to the student. Okay. I can do that, right? But this basically allows you to import the student name from using the scanner. You know, at each of the prompt, you can actually import the student name. Say, I'm gonna say, please. Okay, I don't have to type anything. Let me just run it again. Okay, so I'm gonna say, what is the John? So John gonna be assigned to John gonna be assigned to the student 1, right? Because when I equals 0, then actually a student 0 equals the first actually scan. So then the next one is Andy, Mary, and what's next? Anne and Tony. So after actually complete the import, then I print out the student value. So it's kind of a message. It's all combined in there. So this is actually the output. Okay, this is actually the input. Now, maybe you can make it easy to do that. I can say system dot out dot print then okay. So then you just run it. And output. So you can actually manipulate you can always manipulate the arrays using the loop, because loop is actually, it's basically designed to manipulate things like indexes, right? Because indexes always actually it's kind of a sequence of numbers starting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is actually a very good candidate for the loop. And a loop can deal with this kind of problem very well. So that's basically the the array. So you can actually declare the array. So you can do this. Okay. So next one, let's check. So always just remember when you can check, play with figure 5-4.2.1 in the Xi book. So you always remember in array, the nth element is always the index n-1. So index is always one less than the number of the element. Okay. Let's check the participant. Let's actually continue with the next slide before we actually come back and check this. Check the participation activity. So we can actually declare an array, and then you can actually assign a value to each of the array element. Okay. Now, there's another way you can actually quickly declare the array and assign the element. That's you can actually do using one statement. Okay. So you can use the braces, and to declare, you can first declare the array, and then second assign the values. Okay. So my array is declared as an integer type, and now if you do the array formally, you need to say, okay, integer int my array equals new int like a 3. So you can do this, and then you can assign my array 0 equals 5, my array 1 equals 7, my array 2 equals 11, right? You can always do that. But instead of doing this way, formal way, you can use this shortcut. Okay. So in this case, you don't have to declare, using the number of elements, because you can actually immediately declare this part, int square bracket my array equals, and then uses braces, and then you can put the numbers in the braces, and the number you put the braces of 5, comma 7, comma 11. That means you have declared an array of integer type with 3 elements. The Java gonna automatically check the number of elements inside the braces, and Java find out, oh, only 3. So that means it's an array of 3. So this one statement can replace these 4. It's basically equivalent. Now, this is a good way to declare an array and assign an element if the array is very small. I think it doesn't work well when you declare an array of 1,000 elements and initially assign the 1,000 values in there. That's pretty tough, right? Then you can use this formal way, and then you can use the loop to assign each individual value instead of using the braces. Now, for the example we talked about in the other case, for the student, if we want to actually declare a string like a student, and then you assign the first, you assign a declare string of student of 5 elements, and then you can say the first one is Andy, or the first one is John, Andy, Mary. I'm sorry. and Tony. Yeah, you can do this. And this is actually eventually do the same thing as I did in the Java code we just discussed. So this is actually a very easy way to do this because you only talk about 5 students. But if you want to declare an array of 20 or 30 students, an array of a student in a class, which is 40 students, then that's probably not a good way to declare array and initialize. Okay. So in this case, you don't need a new operator. So you don't need to specify the number. So actually the number of array is defined by the actual number in the braces you actually put in here. So this John going to be assigned to student 0, Andy going to be assigned to student 1, Mary student 2, student 3, student 4, Tony to the student 4, assigned to the student 4. So that's basically how you're going to schedule array. Okay. Okay, so this is another way. So if you have a 20 student, then you can use the for loop. Okay. Okay, I think that's pretty much all I want to talk about for today. So do you have any questions? So I'm going to actually assign the, give you the assignments in the Zybook so you can start to work on the problem, even though I'm continuing going to talk about arrays. So I'm going to talk about more examples for the array. So array is actually very important concept in computer language. Now you can have a one-dimensional array and a two-dimensional array. You can define two-dimensional array, so to represent something in a two-dimensional space. Okay. Okay, I think that's pretty much all for today. So if you have any questions? Okay. Yeah, feel free to send me an email if you have any questions, or come to my office hour, which is actually today at 12:30. I'll be logging into the Google link with the same, exactly the same link as this class. So you can always jump in. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Thank you, Professor.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.